everybody, today at long last I am finally able to get my mitts on what many consider to be the greatest Ferrari road car of all time. And let's be honest here, that's not a title without some very stiff competition. I recall very clearly when the Challenge Stradale was introduced in 2004, and the general consensus at the time seemed to be that if you do use your Ferrari on track, it's certainly worth the extra £20,000 over the regular 360 on which it is based. However, the simple fact is that very few Ferrari owners ever did take their cars on track, and therefore the regular car was probably a much better purchase for the majority of people. However, over the last decade and a half, the Stradale's reputation has grown to a point where it seems almost impossible for it to live up to the hype. Today though, we'll find out if it does. On the face of it, the 430 Scuderia should be a much more special car than the Challenge Stradale, because a lot more effort went into making it a more distinct vehicle from that on which it is based. However, all of the people I know who've had the pleasure of either driving or owning both cars cite the Stradale as their favourite. The reasons for this are usually that they feel it's the more raw, the more driver-focused, pure experience. That was something that put me off the Stradale though when I was looking to buy a car, because I wanted something I could do big miles in, and I didn't want a raw, loud, raucous thing if I was going to drive it the 500 miles up to Scotland. Today though, I guess I'll be able to find out if I really did make a very big mistake. Before we take the car out though, let's just take a quick moment to re-familiarise ourselves with what made the Challenge Stradale and the 360 quite so special. The 360 replaced the much-loved 355, arguably one of the finest road cars Ferrari have ever made, and to date, my personal favourite. However, you can't deny the fact that a lot of the technology in that car was getting on a bit. The chassis was essentially the same as the 348, which could trace its roots back to the 1980s, and the engine could go back even further. Ferrari are a fairly small company though, so it wasn't possible to entirely redevelop the 355. What they chose to do was keep the engine and give it one last glorious send-off by boring it out to 3.6 litres and extracting 400 horsepower from it. The chassis though is where their attention was focused, and I think rightly so, because out went the old steel design and in came a brand spanking new all aluminium unit designed by Ferrari in collaboration with Alcoa, who also built it. This meant that despite the car being somewhat larger than the 355, it was actually a little bit lighter and considerably stiffer. As the story goes, the Challenge Stradale was created from the Ferrari 360 Challenge race car. That, I think, is probably stretching the truth just a little bit. In fact, my friend Scott Ratterossa actually built himself a 360 Challenge Stradale out of his old 360 Modena. There are a few things about that car which are not quite right, but to anybody beyond the most talented anorak, you would never ever really know the difference. In fact, as far as I'm aware, the main change between the two is the fact that his windscreen is not as thin as it would be here. That though really wouldn't bother me at all, because I'm quite happy for a little bit of extra protection in case Bambi wants to come and join you. The recipe for creating the Challenge Stradale was one as old as time. You subtract weight and you add power. Now, the latter part of that is something people argue about quite a bit. Out the back here, you will find, as per the regular 360, a 3.6 litre naturally aspirated V8 with 5 valves per cylinder. In the regular car, it makes 400 horsepower, and here, 425. However, the controversial bit is how Ferrari achieved those extra horses. Because you see, a lot of people will tell you that these were hand-picked, low-tolerance, blueprinted examples of the 360 engine. And others will tell you it's just a map. I would err on the sort of latter side of that, because if you put a Challenge Stradale ECU on a regular 360, it will make Challenge Stradale power. With the Scuderia, there is no argument. They were definitely different engines, but here, the jury's out. Weight saving was achieved a combination of different ways. So up front you have lightweight resin transfer moulding bumpers, which do look a little bit better than standard. You have here the Challenge wheels, which became an option on the F430 as well. Behind those you'll find the carbon ceramic brakes from the Enzo. You've titanium wheel bolts, carbon fibre wing mirrors. Be careful with these, they are a fortune to try and replace now. At the back you've also got the famous Challenge grille, which is a big piece of mesh rather than the solid panel you found on a standard 360. You've also got lightweight Lexan for your rear window here, and they took most of the interior and chucked it in the bin. According to Ferrari, if you ticked all of the lightweight boxes for the Stradale, you could save about 110 kilos over a regular 360. But the truth is, most weren't optioned that way, and in the real world, it's about 60 kilos you're going to be saving, bringing the weight of a car like this down to approximately 1,380 kilos. That's pretty decent. Now, the interior of the Stradale could be had a few different ways, and I've got to be honest, this is actually one of my favourites because you have these beautiful carbon bucket seats which have been trimmed in leather. Very nice. I love leather in cars, particularly in Ferraris, and this is not helping my desire to retrim the interior of the Scuderia. They are not the same bucket seats as you'd find in the Scuderia either. Those are a different design that are actually in some ways still in use today. The steering wheel, very much like you'd find in any other Ferrari of the time, or any other 360 at least, and it's actually nice to see that it's totally devoid of buttons. Ferrari changed how they did their wheels very quickly, because for the 430 you got the little Manettino, and then after that the 458 you get the whole lot all on the wheel. Now in here, of course, you'll notice a lot of things different to the regular 360. So you've got these big carbon door panels, and you've got this carbon center console here, which has a start button that you don't get in the regular car. You've also got launch control and this race option. The normal car would have a sport button, but this does not, and race will change a few different things about the car, the suspension, and the way the paddle shift gearbox operates. Overall, this is actually not a bad place to be. A lot of Stradales that I've seen feel a little bit tired inside, and they all smell a little bit funny too. This one isn't massively different in that regard, but it's probably better than most. It's also similar to how I'd specify a car, although I would have had leather up here as well, and it's this kind of area where you can tell these cars just haven't worn the years very well. I would say in overall quality terms, the Scuderia does feel like a much more upmarket car. But let's be honest here, absolutely nobody ever bought a car like this for the quality of the interior. On the face of it, there are really many reasons why you would not want one of these over the regular 360. Sure, it's slightly better looking, but it has only the automated manual gearbox rather than the beautiful 6-speed open gate shifter the regular car can have. It's going to be a lot more expensive to run, particularly if you need to replace those carbon ceramic discs, and definitely if little Johnny kicks off your wing mirror. It's also much too loud for my liking, and it's no doubt going to be less comfortable than the regular car as well. And that's to say nothing of the fact to get one of these, you'll be paying about triple what you would a nice, clean manual 360. So then, time to find out if it's really worth that much. I think it's fair to say the Stradale has rather high expectations set for it. And actually, in real time, I've just got out of a Testarossa, and that completely blew me away. I thought that was going to be awful, and it actually turned out to be quite decent. This though, everybody has told me it's the best thing ever. It's like sliced bread with cocaine on it. And much like the Testarossa, first impressions are actually not at all what I expected. The gearbox, I can tell you, is not great. Even just at car park speeds, you can tell it doesn't have the refinement of the Scuderia's unit or even the regular F430s. You can tell it's slipping the clutch a lot more. It's just generally a very unhappy bunny. It also doesn't have the mid-range punch of the 430. That, once you get it to about 3,000 RPM, just flies. It's incredible. However, this is also a lot better damped than I thought it would be, and not as noisy. But it doesn't have the steering feel that I expected. It seems just, well, very light and uncommunicative. A bit like a 355 in some ways. It feels too heavily assisted. It's just got nothing really feeding back to me. The 430's always really impressed me. The Scuderia, more accurately, really impressed me. The regular 430, not so much. The gearbox and downshifts, not so quick, and on upshifts, very slow. But I'm currently in normal mode, and I know to get the best out of this car, I need to put it into race. Shifts considerably faster, both up and down. Car is also much louder. These brakes are really quite good, actually. I like the feel from them. The pedals are a little bit on the soft side, but not worryingly so. The gearbox definitely improves. If you're really at the top end of the rev range, I'd say keep your foot in. Anything below about 6,000 RPM though, do help it by lifting off a little bit. The suspension, I actually quite like. I think it rides the road really well. I'd say this, even in race mode, feels about the same probably as the 430 does, and it's soft setting. Very squeaky though, this car. You can tell all the bushes I think have dried out a little bit. Great view though. And it's not too loud in here actually. I'd say probably similar really to the 430. That was something that actually put me off buying a Stradale in the first place. I thought it would just be a bit too loud and raucous inside, but actually it's not too bad. I love the seats. These are spectacular. One thing in the Testarossa I didn't really enjoy. The seats were generally quite useless, and there's loads of room in here too compared with that car. The headlining sag, just like in my 430, and considering this and that are essentially the same car underneath, it's unsurprising that certain things are shared between the two. A great view out, good visibility all round. Yeah, really very easy to place on the road. It's a good size too. The 355 I really love, but because the bonnet is flat, you don't really get a sense of what you're in. With this, you've got those curved haunches, again, same as in the 430. In fact, it's actually the same bodywork. The difference between the two is the cutouts for the headlights, so the 360 is much bigger than those on the 430. Let's give it some beans, shall we? I have to say, at full tilt, the gearbox is actually all right. It's not the lightning fast shifts of the Scud, but that's okay. But you do really need to hold it in for a bit longer to get the absolute best out of it. I prefer the noise of this over the 430. I think I prefer the 355. Oh, Jesus. Like the 430, it will also tap the ground if you provoke it. So as I was saying, I prefer the noise of this to the 430s. It's that more tuneful Ferrari howl, whereas the 430 is just a bit of a bark and a blare and occasionally a drone. It's not actually that sonorous. And in all honesty, I prefer the 355 to the pair of them. There's no need for this to be as loud as it is. It's a little bit antisocial, really. The weird thing is, it doesn't actually sound that bad from in here, but when you're outside, all my life, it makes a racket. Cover ground pretty well, though. Although I am now concerned about it tapping the deck, because if it is as bad as the 430 in that regard, I'm always concerned about how much damage could actually be done. I'm also undecided which is the prettier car. In fact, comment section, help me out here. 430 Scuderia or 360 Challenge Stradale, which is the sexier car? From the front, I think it's 360 all the way. But from the rear, I think the 430 has it. It's got that more special look compared with the regular car. Those centre exit pipes are quite a statement. Not exactly slow though. It might not feel blisteringly quick, but you look down and you are carrying a reasonable amount of pace. I simply, however, cannot escape the fact, and I know what this is going to sound like, that the Stradale is a bit underwhelming. I had actually in my head got this suspicion that it might have aced the Scuderia in terms of steering feel and the deftness of handling, being a slightly lighter, more old school, purer car with less electronics in it. But actually no, I have a lot less faith in this steering. The Scuderia's got much more of a sense of connection about it. This is a lovely thing, but if I already owned a regular 360, I certainly would not be paying another £150,000 to get into one of these. I just wouldn't. All the bits I actually thought that it wouldn't be very good at, volume in the cabin, ride comfort, it's actually really pleasantly surprised me. But where I expected it to be brilliant, it really has fallen short. I expected it to be stiffer than this, more racy, more exciting, more dramatic. And it's not. It is really, genuinely very, very good. It is, to me, probably worth the £20,000 over a regular car if you're looking at something sporty. But the price premium people now want, I just can't justify. You get in the Scuderia, and that to me really does feel like it's elevated itself beyond the regular car. This doesn't. Strange old day when I get in a Testarossa and it absolutely amazes me, and I get in a Stradale and it leaves me just a little bit cold. I'd also be absolutely petrified at all times of something happening to one of these wing mirrors. Honestly, parts prices for these, probably because of people like Bleeding Ratarossa, I'm looking at you, Scott, buying all the bits up and putting them on regular 360s, has driven prices through the roof. So there really should be plenty of spares for these, but in actual fact, there aren't.
I've no idea what this man's talking about.
Now this car is in Argento Nürburgring, so silver, as I'm sure you can see. I like the leathery bits inside. The dash is already falling apart through, I think, simply age. However, this car does not actually have a stripe on it. Yes, I know you can see it. It's a sticker. It didn't have the factory stripe. And I've got to say, in certain specifications, I actually prefer these without the stripe. If I was going to option one of these, I would probably have a red one, or maybe yellow, because they do look good in yellow. And yellow, definitely I would have without the stripe, actually. But I was entertaining recently, thinking about, you know, obviously the future, and if things go really well, etc, etc, maybe getting one of these to go alongside the Scuderia. I don't think I'll bother. I think I'll just get a regular 360. Maybe I'd then find a Challenge Stradale front end to go on it, like the little slightly more aggressive lip at the back, but beyond that, yeah, it's good, but it's not great. Even there, I thought it might have actually tapped the deck. Could just be the noise from the bushings in here, which I think are pretty dry because this car does spend a lot of time in storage. Should say a really, really big thank you to its owner, Rob, for actually lending it to me in the first place. Absolute legend that he is. Now in the Scuderia, pressing the sport button or the race button doesn't really make the car that much louder, but in here I think it does, or it certainly makes it louder more of the time. One of the things I don't like about either car is the fact that it's such a binary sound. You know, it's either pretty dang quiet or ridiculously loud, and I wish there was more of a halfway house, really. Or that you could actually set it, so you could say, no, I want this quiet now, or no, I want this loud now, and it just stuck with it. Anyway, bit of noise. Yeah, I don't have the confidence with this car that I do with the 430 at all. It's the steering. Massive letdown. Very disappointed in you, Stradale. Very disappointed indeed. Well, I guess it's not exactly a disaster for Ferrari today, as the Testarossa acquitted itself marvellously. But I'm still very glad I finally got to experience what is definitely a legendary car. Thanks to you all for watching. Please like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.